Hello, and welcome to the Quality Control Day recorded training. I'm Jennifer Stafford, the Director in the Division of Assessment and Accountability Support. And with me today is Helen Jones, Program Manager in our division. We're so excited to provide you this Quality Control Day recorded training. We've had a lot of success and positive feedback on our trainings that we are providing prior to events. So we're happy to provide this training for you to be able to prepare and view the training for preparation of Quality Control Day. Now, in our agenda, what we're going to cover today is the purpose of Quality Control Day, the activities that will take place during the day. We're going to give you some preliminary cautions around the data and talk about what the embargo status is and when it is in place. We're going to also discuss federal classifications and some reporting timelines for you. We're going to go into some details on the data and the files that are provided on Quality Control Day, and then the procedures and the materials that we will follow during this Quality Control Day. As you know, this is the next step in the quality control process. It started way back in the spring with getting the rosters right and identifying those students who should have tested, were supposed to test, and beginning to apply for non-participations. It went into the next step in the fall data review, which took place August 6th through August 13th. And we learned a lot during that time. We're now taking the next step in that quality control process with the Quality Control Day on September 8th. And then the next step in the data review will be that 10-day regulatory review after the data goes public. So as Kentucky, we provide these reviews of the student data so that we can get to as accurate of reporting as possible on our assessment data. So these multiple times that you're reviewing the student data, beginning back in the spring and with fall data review, all of these quality control steps are getting us toward accurate data. We want that level of confidence for everyone who uses the data, so that we want to be able to provide summary and student data that is as accurate as possible. So information gathered from these assessments are used to identify areas of need, and so we want teachers, administrators to be able to rely on these important data and provide those opportunities for students. And especially during this time now, with the impact that we've had during the pandemic, I think it's going to be so important that we provide the schools the information they need in order to get to those recovery efforts. So the accuracy of data is at the utmost importance and the priority for us. Now, the quality control process is working. During that fall data review, August 6th through 13th, systemic issues were identified. Even though at that time we were really focusing on individual student data, through the good efforts of our district assessment coordinators and building assessment coordinators, there were issues that were found that include the use of the blended learning groups. We learned that there were multiple ways of administering and implementing those blended learning groups. The way one district applied those blended learning groups was not the way another district did. So we saw a lot of variation district to district on those blended learning groups. One example we learned during that quality control process and during that fall data review is that categorizing the attendance of our students who were virtual, in-person, or hybrid was so different. Some schools even use like colors and names for the groups. Some schools use like numbers, like group number 1 and group number 2, and all the way to 10 and 15. So we were able to discover that the information coming to OAA was so varied that we could not depend on the understanding whether the student was virtual, in-person, or hybrid. The other thing that we learned during the fall data review was that students who were expelled and or withdrawn were combined into one category. That they should have been separated into 2 categories. They weren't. In addition, we found that K-screen scores had not been included in the overall files. So there will be changes to the data that you see during Quality Control Day as well as public reporting. So as a result of the systematic issues that were found during that fall data review, virtual, in-person, and hybrid have been removed from all the spreadsheets. They will also be removed from public reporting. So those blended learning groups, where the instructional settings was too varied and too great for us to be able to reliably put that data out publicly. And so therefore the decision was made to remove those instructional settings from both the spreadsheets that you'll see on Quality Control Day, as well as in the school report card for public reporting. Corrections have been made to the K-screen data, as well as separating those students from the withdrawn or expelled. So those 2 pieces have been made and corrected. Then also there will be changes to individual student data that were approved through SDRR during that fall data review. So just want you to realize that this process is working, because the ultimate goal for us to report publicly is accurate data, and that's what we're getting toward. Now, let's take a look at the activities for Quality Control Day. For Quality Control Day, the purpose of it is to ensure accurate reporting. As we just discussed, the steps are working toward accurate data. So you are going to receive updated spreadsheets, and you'll be able to see where those changes have been made that we just discussed. You'll also be able to conduct from those updated spreadsheets a final review of data to ensure accuracy for your schools and districts. And on this Quality Control Day, we're looking at only statewide systematic issues that could potentially impact multiple schools. So the review for individual student data has passed. We've had opportunities during the spring on the rosters and again on fall data review. Today, with our quality control review, is for looking at those big systematic issues. The next time you will have an opportunity to review individual student data will be after public reporting. So let's pause at this point and turn it over to Helen for information on preliminary data, cautions, and the embargo status.
Thanks, Jennifer. My name is Helen Jones, and I'm the Program Manager in the Division of Assessments and Accountability Support. I want to start by reiterating the importance to maintaining security with your state assessment data. Keep in mind that this is still preliminary data. So what does that mean for us? Understand that this is preliminary data and therefore it is subject to change. As Jennifer stated, that this process of reviewing the data is working. The quality control day is the next step in this whole review process. We want to ensure that at quality control day, DACs and superintendents will be able to see their school and district data. It is crucial. We cannot emphasize how important it is to maintain security during this preliminary period. The district's reports are subject to change. As Jennifer talked about, as a result of the fall data review, we've already begun to make changes in the way that we will report the data. You do not want to make copies and leave copies because they can live forever and it may not necessarily reflect the accuracy in our reporting. The data is not final. I want to stress that this is not final. This is just the next step to ensure that what we do prior to public reporting is accurate. So until then, all data is still in the embargo phase. When schools and districts, they may discuss, you can discuss the data with school staff as well as with the media. But anyone that is going to see the data must sign a non-disclosure. The preliminary embargo data sharing time. So let's talk about that. During this period, we've already begun the preliminary embargo summative assessment data is shared in 3 different phases. Each phase is critical to ensure that the data will be reported is accurate. You've already seen some of the first phase of this. The first phase was during the fall data review. During this time, districts had the opportunity to review the individual student data for systemic problems. This data is the scores that were reported by the vendors. It's not likely to change. The individual student data may be shared with schools, district leaders, and teachers who could share it to make teachers could use it for instructional decisions. Teachers would only need to see the data for students who are in their own classrooms. So everyone doesn't necessarily need to see the student data. The fall data review and QC day is an opportunity to review the data again. As Jennifer stated, you will see some revisions. This is still that preliminary look at the data. It can be shared with school and district leaders, as well as, like superintendents, the DACs, the district level staff, with a vested interest, the principals, the BACs, until after public release. Understand that anyone viewing the data must sign a non-disclosure that is maintained by the DACs. The pre-release data post-QC day, districts may discuss internally with the media. It cannot be shared in a public meeting or by the media until after the embargo is lifted. Again, everyone viewing the data must sign a non-disclosure form. All of these are the steps to prepare for public release. I want to note that publicly released data does not include student level data. Let's talk a little bit about the federal classifications. I want to remind everyone that during the spring 2021 administration of the state summative assessments, KDE received a waiver from accountability. What that means is that the state will not identify any new schools for comprehensive support and improvement, or CSI, targeted support and improvement, or TSI, as well as additional targeted support and improvement. What this means is that schools that are currently identified for federal designation will continue to be supported in the 2021-2022 school year. During the fall, any school that is currently identified as CSI, TSI, or ATSI will not exit due to the waiver that we received from the U.S. Department of Education. This waiver also prohibited federally designated schools from exiting this school year. KDE will receive additional information regarding exiting in the fall of 2022 that will be announced in the spring. Everything that we've discussed is in preparation to public reporting. Ensuring that the data is accurate requires several steps. So that's why we're taking these extra time. Maintaining security during the embargo phase is critical. The next steps are important as well. The embargo period prior to public release, data is shared with district, and it may be discussed with the media, as long as everyone has signed a non-disclosure, and it cannot be shared publicly. Cannot stress how important it is that this data cannot be shared publicly. The public release of the school data is the steps that we're getting ready. We're moving towards. We're ensuring that the data is accurate. We're taking second looks to just verify that everything that we release to the public is accurate. During this period, data review, we will have another phase that we will go into, in which the next step after public release is the data review, where the individual student changes are available. This will be our 10-day regulatory period. It's where you can look in the student data raster, or SDRR, another look to verify that this data is accurate. So let's talk a little bit about what we're looking towards. We're looking at reporting for 2020-2021. I want to remind you that no accountability indicators or ratings will be reported. It will be based on the students that are assessed, not the 100-day requirements. It is based on you will see participation information in your data. Performance results will be reported for the 2021 assessments. You will also see the graduation rate, the quality of school climate and safety survey data will be reported. This particular data will contain two components. You will see the climate and safety component, as well as there's an opportunity to learn. So students were assessed looking during this survey for the climate as well as opportunity to learn. If you're looking for or need additional information on what will be reported this fall, please turn to our August DAC monthly webcast, beginning around the 34-minute mark. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer.
Thank you, Helen. let's turn our attention now to some data details and what you'll see at the opening of our Quality Control Day on September 8th. You will receive updated spreadsheets and data that we discussed earlier that has been, several things have been corrected or removed. So for Quality Control Day, you'll see very similar spreadsheets that you did for the fall data review, but they've been updated. You'll have English learners, data and folders. You'll have graduation rate folders. You're also going to see the K-Prep NAPD, and those are the performance levels of novice, apprentice, proficient, and distinguished. Now, we'll want to note for you that the K-Prep NAPD folder also contains the alternate K-Prep information. So you'll see those performance levels and scores there for all students who took that assessment. For all grades, in content areas, so reading, math, science, and writing across all of those grade levels. You also have student data files. So those are the pieces that will be reviewed. Now, you'll also receive information and data about ACT, the kindergarten screener, as well as that quality of school climate and safety survey that Helen just mentioned. They are included in the folders, but they're not included in the Quality Control Day review. Now, generally, these data have been previously released. Generally, we have ACT released earlier. We have kindergarten screen usually released in December to the Board of Education, and the Quality of School Climate and Safety Survey, this is the first time we're seeing this data. So those data have not been a part of our regular routine of data review. So we're continuing with reviewing the information and data that we have in the past. Now, this year there's going to be an emphasis on participation rate. So it's going to be really important to talk about and understand the students who took the assessment and those who didn't take the assessment, because there's going to be a good bit of context for your scores in those students who didn't take the test. So for the participation rate, we wanted to provide a little bit more in-depth information about the calculation. So for the participation rate, it's a simple division problem. So it has a numerator and a denominator. So for the numerator of the participation rate, it includes students that attempted the test. So all of those students who attempted the test will be part of the numerator. In addition, it will also include EL students that attempted the test for math and science. So you remember, as a requirement from the federal government, that EL students have to take or attempt math and science. So the students will be in there. So the attemptedness column in the spreadsheet must be yes for them to be included in the numerator. EL students are not required by the U.S. Department of Education to attempt reading and math, so it's not required. So those students' assessments are included in the numerator. So those students could be either in the column as a yes or an NR, which stands for not required. So all those EL students are included in the numerator for reading and writing participation. Now, the denominator, again, it's a simple math problem, division problem. The denominator includes students without a non-participation. So it's all students without a non-participation. So all of those students, as well as those first year EL students with approved non-participation across all of those content areas. Now, you'll recall new this year is participation rate by all content areas. Previously, we had participation rate, just one participation rate across all assessments. But because there was an emphasis from the U.S. Department of Education on participation, we were able to upgrade our processes and have more refined participation rates across each of our content areas. So again, the participation rate is a simple division, numerator divided by the denominator. And again, it is required for federal reporting. So those pieces of the numerator and denominator are federally required to include for the participation rate. Also, we wanted to talk a bit about the suppression. Suppression is when student information, or excuse me, information is not provided publicly. And there are scenarios in which school data can lead to information about individual students. And so if there is a situation where there's a possibility that individual student scores could be deduced from the data, then it will be suppressed. So here's a few examples of when that could possibly happen. If there are fewer than 10 students per grade level, there is a possibility that that information could be provided or kind of backed into individual student scores. So per FERPA guidelines, we will not publicly report, or even within the data that goes public, any content area where there are fewer than 10 students per grade. Also, there are situations that will be suppressed that there are more than 10 students, but there are ways in which to get to the individual student score. For example, if all of your student demographic group receive the same performance level. So in the example we have here on the slide, if all of the Hispanic students in a school got the same exact performance level of proficient, if that were the case, then that data would be suppressed, because if there are all the Hispanic students got proficient, then it would be publicly known that what the individual student would have scored. So that would be suppressed. Also, if individual student performance could be determined by applying an algebraic formula. Let me give you an example of this. You have a school district that has multiple schools in it and a small, tiny A5 school. So what we do is we aggregate that up to the district. And at that tiny A5 school, if there are a limited amount of students, then the information could be deduced from aggregating it to the district, what those students at the A5 school, the district information would be suppressed. The school level reports would be publicly reported, but the aggregation up to the individual district would be suppressed. So that is, again, a situation where there could be multiple students in the data, but this data still be suppressed. The priority has always been that we report at the school level. So again, the data at the district level may be suppressed because of a small number of students at an A5 school. So we wanted to provide you those scenarios. So if you look at your spreadsheets on Quality Control Day and you don't see information, it could be a reason, one of these reasons why that data has been suppressed. Let's take a look now at the online quality control materials and procedures. District assessment coordinators, if you have not submitted your non-disclosure form to DAC info, please do that. Submitting that quality control day non-disclosure form will get you access to the data. Without that non-disclosure form, data will not be released in the KDE application's login on QC day. So please submit your non-disclosure to dacinfo@education.ky.gov so that you have access to your folders beginning on September 8th. On September 8th, a special DAC email will be sent with links to materials that include the link to the KDE application's login. Now, this is the login that you've been using over fall data review that gets you access to those spreadsheets and that preliminary data in those data sets. So beginning at 9 a.m., that application's login will open for those district assessment coordinators who have submitted that non-disclosure form. Also in that special email on September 8th, a link to the quality control checklist as well as a data discrepancy report will be provided. So that online quality control checklist will provide you as DACs and anyone who you have helping you review the data on that day, whether it be your BAC or principals or others that you want to assist with the review. That checklist will provide steps for review at the school and district level. It'll have specific information about where to go and where to look at within the folders. If there are discrepancies found in the data, then there will be a link to a data discrepancy report. So if you think something is missing, there's a systematic issue, then that data discrepancy report will be the way that you communicate to the Office of Assessment and Accountability about those errors that you've found. Now again, it's for systematic issues, not individual student issues. Other materials and resources that will be beneficial for you on QC Day is the SDRR. There was an entry, the question of the week, on this past Monday that advised to view or print your transfer listing, your ticket listings, and the student listings that are available in SDRR. Those you may want to look back to and reference during your review during that quality control day. You're also going to have a QC Day contact from KDE. We have our districts assigned to specific consultants within our support division and our data division. So you'll have a person that you can directly contact if you have a question about any of the information, both in the spreadsheet or in general. You also may want to have access to Infinite Campus. That's our primary source data, and so having access to Infinite Campus and the information there may also be a resource to you. Now let me transfer to Helen Jones, who's going to provide information about those folders that will be available the morning of QC Day.
Thank you, Jennifer. Let's talk about the folders that you will see and the spreadsheets that are contained within the folders on QC Day. The first folder that you'll see will be the EL folders. Let me back up a little bit. I want to apprise you that within each of the folders, all of the folders for QC Day will contain a district and a school level folder spreadsheets. You will receive as Jennifer stated, the QC Day checklist, and that will have additional instructions on how to review the data on QC Day. So let's get into the folders themselves. What you'll be looking at, you'll have, let's look at the EL. We'll go through each one of those and talk about what the data will look like for each one of those folders. So let's look at the EL or the English Learner folders. You will have information on access for ELs as well as the EL attainment. So you will be able to see actually in the access folder, the domain, demographic data will be contained here. Jennifer mentioned some of these pieces that will be on the spreadsheet, such as the suppression, enrollment, the number that was tested, participation rate. All of that will be contained here in this EL folder. Now in the EL attainment folder, this is where you will actually see the participation rate in the students that actually reached attainment or during the test. In the next folder, you will see will be the graduation rate. This folder contains the disaggregated data for 4- and 5-year cohorts. This will not contain the individual student level data. We will talk about where that data will be contained, but this is where you'll be able to just see the summary data in this graduation rate. The next folder that you will have access to is your K-Prep, the NAPD, or Novice, Apprentice, Proficient, and Distinguished. There's 2 subfolders that will be contained here. You will see it, you'll be able to see one of the spreadsheets will have by grade, and the other one is by level. So you will have be able to see actually how the students performed at the specific grade level. So if you have like an elementary, you would be able to see how the 5th graders and the 4th and 3rd graders perform. And then you will have also by level, which means you will be able to see how the actual school as a whole performs in this particular folder. I will mention that at the grade level, the other piece that I think you should be aware of is you'll see it by the content. So you'll see it by grade, you'll see it by content if you're looking at the grade level, but you'll also see how the data is broken down by the demographic subgroups. So if you're looking at all of those different subgroups, you will look at you will have like African Americans, you'll have students that are on free and reduced lunch, you'll have all of those federal demographic subgroups will be broken down. The same thing by level, you'll be able to see it as a school as a whole by level and how they performed in each one of those content area. Now, let's talk a little bit about that student data folder. Here, this particular folder has information. There's 2 subfolders within this. You will have one for graduates as well as the students that were assessed. So you will have both of those subfolders are within the student data, and this is where you will be able to actually see the individual student data here and how the students performed on each content area. So you will be able to look at, for graduates, the 4- and 5-year cohorts are combined here. For the students, the ones that graduated on time or not. And then you will also see, and then the next subfolder is the test. So this is the content area test, and under this particular spreadsheet in test, you will see for content, and then there will be a separate tab for our EL students. So this will have the access tab. So you will have on the spreadsheet under test, you will have the content area, all of the summative assessments that students took at the state level under the content tab. And then for our EL students, you will have an access tab where you'll be able to see the individual students' results on how they performed on access. And all of this is contained in this particular folder. For additional information, let's turn it back to Jennifer.
Thank you, Helen. Let's review one more time the Quality Control Day procedures. You're going to receive an email the morning of September 8th with access to the KDE applications login. You're going to access that preliminary data in those folders that Helen just reviewed. You're also in that email going to receive a link to the quality control checklist. You're going to follow those steps in that checklist for review of the data. If there are any discrepancies, you will complete a data discrepancy report, which the link will be in that special email on September 8th. So in the checklist, there is going to be a couple of places where you certify that you have reviewed the information and have completed your review and are okay and have submitted any discrepancy reports if that's needed. Okay, so you're going to access the data, you're going to follow the steps in the QC data checklist, you're going to report any data discrepancies on that data discrepancy report, and then in that checklist you're going to verify that you've reviewed and have submitted any data discrepancy reports. So that link, again, all those links to these resources will be provided in the September 8th special DAC email. Now, note there at the bottom of the page, those two documents, the data discrepancy report as well as the QC checklist, are password protected. And the password to both of those forms is QC Day, all caps with no spaces. And just again, as a reminder, district assessment coordinators must submit their completed non-disclosure form to DAC info for access to be granted in that KDE applications login. Now, communicating with OAA about any problematic issue or systematic issue will be completed and communicated by submitting that data discrepancy report. The data division will be researching and analyzing all the information put through on those data discrepancy reports. So keep in mind that they will be researching all day through the information, and you may have responses back that day, but it also may take a few days in order to resolve and find the issues. So, but you will eventually receive a response from the KDE assessment at education.ky.gov mailbox. So please be patient. We appreciate very much your looking at and finding potential systematic issues, but it could take a little bit. And just because you don't find an issue doesn't mean another DAC in another district doesn't find one. So what other DACs are reviewing could impact your data, your schools, and your districts. So as we stressed earlier in the recording, that these data are preliminary and could possibly change. Now, for Quality Control Day, districts are assigned, each member of the Office of Assessment and Accountability staff have a role in the Quality Control Day. So districts are assigned a consultant, and the preferred way to communicate with your consultant is through email. So you can see here the list of districts and the corresponding consultant who you can contact specifically on that day. So you can always, prior to QC Day, you can always email us at dacinfo@education.ky.gov if you have any questions about this PowerPoint presentation. But on QC Day, we want to provide you direct support and have all hands on deck to support you during that day. So please find your district on this list and the corresponding consultant that will be assisting you on September 8th. That does conclude our training in preparation for QC Day. We want to thank you so much for your time and attention today, for the review that you will complete on September 8th, our Quality Control Day, and everything that you do for our students on a daily basis. Thank you very much.